Expand your mind and enrich your world. It's time for another outstanding podcast from ICRT.
Welcome to another podcast edition of Taiwan Talk. I'm Keith Manconi. Currently, there are over 500,000 foreign workers in Taiwan, with more than 200,000 working as domestic helpers and caregivers. Many work long hours caring for the old and handicapped and are paid well below the national minimum wage of about 19,000 NT a month. Recently, the Ministry of Labor announced it was reviewing measures that would increase the salary for domestic workers to the minimum wage and set up rules that would mandate caregivers be given 8 hours of continuous rest every day. To help us understand the proposals and what they could mean for foreign caregivers, we're joined now by the founder and head of a Taiyuan-based NGO called Vietnamese Migrant Workers and Brides, which advocates for policy reform and offers support services to immigrants in Taiwan. Father Peter Nguyen Van Hong, thanks for joining us.
Hello, Keith. Thank you very much for inviting me to be interviewed today. I'm happy to be here, and I hope that through this interview that ICRT listeners will understand better about the situation of the domestic workers here in Taiwan.
So first, some of our listeners might not necessarily be familiar with domestic workers in Taiwan. Could you tell us a little bit about who these workers are? Why did they decide to live and work in Taiwan, and what did they find when they came here?
These domestic workers are mainly, at the moment, from Indonesia. A small portion of them are from Vietnam and the Philippines. Very little number of Thai workers working as domestic workers. Now, why do they come here? Because they want to fight to earn money, to deal with their poverty, to change their livelihood in their own country. And then these people, prior to come to Taiwan, they have to pay a huge amount of money to the brokers in their own country, especially from Indonesia. At the moment, they have to pay more than 100,000 NT in order to be able to come to Taiwan.
So what do you make of the ministry's announcement that it's going to be looking at these rules and potentially raising wages and requiring more time off for these workers? I'm
very surprised to hear that the Labor Department here in Taiwan is going to raise the minimum wage for domestic workers here in Taiwan. We, the NGOs in Taiwan, we are the MENT, that is Migrant Empowerment Network in Taiwan, have tried very hard to advocate and lobby for this change for a long time. And, the Taiwan government hasn't done anything until recently. And I know that the pressure is not coming from us, actually. It comes from the United Nations delegation coming here to Taiwan to deal with CEDAW. And this is what the Taiwan government is doing. And I would like to say that if this change coming from this kind of pressure, I don't think that is a good attitude to do that. Because you only do things to satisfy others, regardless of the injustices happened to these people. That's the first thing I want to say. Second thing, for the last 10 years, we have tried to talk to the government of Taiwan that 15,840 minimum wage for the domestic workers doesn't make any sense at all. And why they make the distinction between domestic workers and those who are working in the factory. They are workers. And why don't include these people in the labor standard law? And we see that as an act of discrimination.
So currently, employers of these foreign caregivers need to pay them a minimum 15,840 NT, and we're talking about raising that to the national minimum wage, which is going to be increased to 19,273 in July. But even if that were to happen, the way that this is being structured, wages for these workers wouldn't actually increase the full difference between these numbers. Can you talk a little bit about why that is?
In this new proposal, the Taiwan government did increase the amount of money for the domestic workers' wage. However, they allowed the employer to deduct 2,500 NT to pay for the food and lodging.
Right, so the actual increase is more like 900 NT per month.
So I think that the amount of money seems to be a large amount. However, in reality, it's not. It is not. A part that I don't understand is that the people who live with the family, work as a member, work for the family, and now they are deducted with that amount of food and lodging. So I think if the government of Taiwan really want to help these workers, to treat these workers justly, so think about not having that part, food and lodging, in this new proposal.
Right, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, so to me, $15,840 a month, that sounds like a very small amount of money to live on, especially if you're trying to support a family overseas and send money back overseas. Even raising that a little bit more still seems like quite a small amount to live on. Can you talk a little bit about what kind of constraints this puts on these people? How does this affect their life to be living on this kind of money?
From my own working experience with these people, 15,840 is a really more amount of money that these people have monthly. Why? Because they have to spend their own money here for themselves, and then they have to pay for the broker fees. I have met many Indonesian domestic workers, and then they only receive 2,000, 3,000 NT per month because they have to pay their broker fee before coming to Taiwan. And then for the family of these domestic workers prior to departure, they expect that these, the mother in the family will send the money home in order to help the family financially. But when they came here and they work and they only receive 2,000 or 3,000 for the first 10 months, and then the needs of the family is not responded, and they themselves working here in Taiwan see that, this is not what I want. And that a lot of people who run away from this group of migrant workers.
I want to go back to a point that you mentioned a second ago. So the set of reforms that we're talking about would cover domestic workers and caregivers. From the outside, it's not really clear to me why we're making a distinction between two different sets of foreign workers, between laborers and domestic workers. Can you talk a little bit more about maybe why the government is doing it and how that affects these workers?
I think the reason why the government is doing that is because they want to, on the one hand, to respond to the needs of this society, the aging society. There are many more people become old, and then these people want to have a maid who works in the family.
So you're saying Taiwan is trying to make it easier to get more domestic help?
So the Taiwan government now at the moment want to deal with that reality, not with a more creative way like other countries. In Taiwan, when they want to get a domestic worker or caretaker, they want these people to do everything in the family, not only taking care for the elderly. They want this person to clean, to cook, to wash, and then sometimes, other times, they send these people to their relatives' family to do the cleaning. The second thing that Taiwan government want to make the family who have the elderly happy, and then the more they can do that, and then they can get the support by voting from this population. The migrant worker who work as a domestic worker and caretaker in Taiwan here, they don't have power to put the pressure on the government because they cannot vote. But the employer who employ domestic worker and caretaker, they have the power. Therefore, they dare not to do anything to make these people unhappy. If they are unhappy, and they will not vote for them, vote for their party. And that is one of the very, very significant factors involved in this kind of decision.
So there is a lot of pressure from these employers of foreign domestic workers who really want to keep this labor cheap, and so it's not such a big burden on their family.
Yeah.
Earlier you were saying that in many cases, even though there are laws that require a certain amount of time to be given off, for these workers. Often, that's not how it works in practice. Often, these employers are not granting time off. So even if this set of proposals is passed, even if later this year the Ministry of Labor says that they're going to increase the wages for these domestic workers and make other rules that would require 8 hours a day given to these workers off, do you have any concerns about the implementation of that? Do you think that employers are actually going to follow the rules that are put out?
From my working experience, I am not really convinced that this new proposal will be implemented. Why? Because, as I said earlier, the families of the employers, when they employ a domestic workers or caretakers, they want this person to do everything in the house. Therefore, when the work is not done, and then the work cannot rest, first. Secondly, brokers, even though they receive the services, money from the worker, however, they are always standing on the side of the employers. And they will put the pressure on the domestic worker and caretakers to do the job that the employers want. Because when the employers are happy, then the broker will get money. And therefore, domestic worker and caretaker themselves will not be able to enjoy this new regulation, that is, having 8 hours rest a day and then 1 day off a week. I really doubted it.
So if a worker, if a foreign domestic worker finds themselves not being given the time off that they're entitled to and being worked more than they should be, is there anything that they can do? Can they go to the government and file a complaint, or can they go to an organization like you and find help there? What kind of help can they find?
The government, they have the hotline 1955. They can call and they complain. They can call the labor bureau, local labor bureau. They can call the NGO asking for help. But the government, different offices, I wonder whether they have the language to do that or the confidence. Because they are very, very afraid of being repatriated after complaining. My working experience have informed me that the migrant workers themselves, not regardless of domestic or caretaker or just worker working in the factory, will be able to complain, because after they complain, they will be singled out by the employer or the broker, and then their life is in the hell. If they call my office here, and then, of course, I can help, and with the other NGO we can help. And the first thing we can help them is to help them, to provide them necessary means to protect themselves from being threatened to be repatriated first, to protect them first. And then secondly, we will deal with other issues. So I think that if these workers come to us asking for help from the NGO, so we will be able to help. But with the government, I don't know.
The Ministry of Labor is currently saying that they're just in discussion. They're not going to rush this. They're going to consult with employers, and we're probably not going to see anything before the end of the year. And another thing to point out is that we're not talking about actual legislation here. We're just talking about an administrative change. About 3 years ago, there was actual legislation that was introduced by a portion of the Ministry of Labor, and that never got past the Legislative Yuan. It wasn't possible to pass that. So as the Ministry of Labor is discussing all this and as this is all being worked on, I want to ask you, what is your organization doing to kind of promote this discussion and make sure that what comes out of this is something that you would be happy with?
The history of actively involved in changing legislation regarding to the right of domestic workers and caretakers has been going on for the last more than 15 years. Men have introduced to the Legislative Yuan 家事服务法 Household Service Act. We numerously attended a meeting with the previous Labor Department called CLA and talk about different articles in the proposal of Household Service Act. And then, as you just mentioned, that 3 years ago, under the Wang Nguyen, she introduced the legislation to the legislative yuan, but it was turned down. So until now, we, the NGO like myself and other members of MENT, has continued to work very hard to lobby for Household Service Act. And we have encountered so many challenges and so many difficulties. So we, later has actively involved with the local NGO to work with the other NGO regarding to a new legislation called Long-Term Service Act. So we ourselves have tried very hard, and we will continue to do that because we consider that this issue about discrimination against domestic worker and caretaker, this is an issue. It's a political issue, and it's also social issue. There are two options that we suggested. One is to include domestic worker and caretaker into the labor standard law, or to have a new set of law so that the rights of domestic worker and caretaker has to be respected. So there is no distinction between domestic worker and caretakers with the factory workers. And recently, the United Nations delegation coming here in Taiwan to listen to the NGOs, and my office here has a representative to attend the briefing and conferences, and we have raised this issue. And luckily that the delegates who attended this meeting did pay attention to this issue. And I hope that we will, Taiwan government will listen to us in order to protect the rights of these domestic workers and caretakers. And then as long as Taiwan government hasn't done that, we will continue to challenge it and find ways to deal with it.
How do you think that these problems that we've discussed today, facing foreign workers, how do you think that compares to other nations? So how do you think Taiwan compares to other nations on this score?
When I had a chance to attend some government meetings to a higher level, they often use Singapore as an example to talk about how Taiwan treated migrant workers and domestic workers and caretakers. And they very boasted, saying that Taiwan's salary is higher than other countries. And I myself, each time I heard about it, I really feel a sense of unease in myself, because using other countries' standard to compare for the wrong thing that you are doing in this country regarding to the way that you treat domestic workers and caretakers is a wrong way to do it. Therefore, I think that with the development of democracy, with the development of the social trend in this country, so this is the issue about injustice and inequality. So that Taiwan needs to look at its issue in this country and then to deal with it in order to make the life of these people, domestic worker and caretaker and factory worker in this country, make their life, make the right according to have to be changed. So that is the way that I see myself when talking about this issue.
So just so our listeners know, the services that your organization provides, that's open to all immigrant workers, not just Vietnamese workers. Is that right?
That's right, yes.
However, you do specialize in Vietnamese workers. That's something that you focus on especially. Can you talk a little bit about any particular needs that these workers have and the ways that you serve them in particular?
Yes, as you just said, that we work, we help all migrant workers here, but we are specialized for the Vietnamese because I myself is a Vietnamese, and we have about 4 Vietnamese case workers in my office, and we speak Vietnamese. And then I heard from the rumor that Taiwan government will open this market to the Vietnamese domestic workers and caretaker in the near future. So the concern that I have now, with the recent Thai Vietnamese government activities regarding to promulgated Administrative Decree 95 that punish those who run away from 4,500 to 5,000 US dollars when they return home. And by doing this, Taiwan government will be very happy to open its market for the Vietnamese caretaker and domestic workers.
So you're saying that Vietnam is going to put a fine in place, so Vietnamese workers who return back to Vietnam are going to face a fine?
Yes. Now, by doing that, they just want to satisfy Taiwan government request regarding to this matter, so that they can open the market for the Vietnamese domestic and caretaker in the future. My point is that the Vietnamese broker is very tricky and very bad to the domestic and caretaker of Vietnamese migrant workers here in this country. So because these workers need to go out and work and earn money, therefore they don't really have the ability to understand the situation after coming to this country. I have to say that before Taiwan has accepted Vietnamese domestic and caretaker. However, they have to freeze it because a lot of them run away. And the reason why they become undocumented because they had to pay a huge amount of broker fee to the Vietnamese broker prior coming to Taiwan. And so this time, the government of Vietnam said that for those who are the domestic worker and caretaker, only have to pay about 3,000 US dollars or 4,000 US dollars. But in reality, it's not that way. Because until now, for the workers who come here to work as the worker, migrant worker, they have the government regulation saying that they only have to pay 4,500. But in reality, they have to pay 6,000 to 7,000 US dollars. And then the way that the broker in Vietnam did it to protect themselves is to ask the Vietnamese police to come into a small room to sit with the worker and record a video and saying that you only pay 4,500 US dollars. But in reality, they had accepted about 6 or 7,000 before they come into that room. Why the worker didn't want to say, didn't lie in front of the video? Because they had no choice. If they said the truth, and they're not allowed to come to Taiwan. Therefore, if Taiwan government want to open this market to the Vietnamese domestic and caretakers, Taiwan government have to make sure that there is tools and regulation so that they can monitor the amount of money that the Vietnamese domestic and caretaker have to pay to the broker prior come to this country. Don't depend on the Vietnamese government because it's a very corrupted officer and corrupted system in Vietnam. And then I think if Taiwan government don't have that tools and regulation to monitor it, you only open this market for corruption and for injustice in this country.
So while I have you here, another issue I wanted to bring up is a number of years ago, you were recognized by the U.S. State Department for your work bringing to light the extent of human trafficking that was going on in Taiwan. Now, about a week ago, the U.S. State Department released its annual Trafficking in Persons report, and in that report, Taiwan was listed as a Tier 1 country for the 5th consecutive year. So this is a report that assesses the efforts of countries around the world to combat human trafficking, and basically it found that Taiwan met the minimum standards that they had set. So it had strong punishments, at least on the books. So I'm really curious to hear your take on the report's findings as someone who, about a decade ago, traveled to the U.S., and was instrumental in having Taiwan put on the Tier 2 watch list status, so bumped down from Tier 1 to Tier 2. First, it seems, from this report, it seems like the U.S. is sort of saying that Taiwan has made some progress since that time. And I'm curious, do you agree with that? Has it made any progress? And if so, how real is that progress?
Oh, thank you very much for asking me this question. By seeing Taiwan to be listed on the Tier 1, I would like to congratulate Taiwan. But on the other hand, I would like to say that even though Taiwan has made progresses in protection, preventing, and prosecution, however, the very basic problems that creating forced labor trafficking here in this country has not yet dealt with properly. Talking about forced labor trafficking in this country, we're talking about migrant workers. And I myself working with particularly Vietnamese migrant workers, and I can see the forced labor trafficking happening to every Vietnamese migrant workers here in this country. These people have to pay a scrupulous amount of broker fee, ranging from 6,500 to 7,700 US dollars. And so when they came to this country, they have no other option of saying that, this work is not what I have signed, or this is not what I'm expecting. So by paying that amount of money to the broker in Vietnam, these people, when they come here, they are the involuntary servitude. So that's the way I see it. And then I read that particular part also in the report on Taiwan. So I think until this particular part dealing with the broker in Vietnam hasn't done anything about it, and I think that forced labor is still happening here to the Vietnamese migrant workers on a daily basis. Therefore, I really would like Taiwan government to deal with this. And I have met many officers from the Labor Department, also from NIA, and when I talk about this, and they said that they have no authority to do with broker fees when the worker pay in Vietnam. I think that kind of statement, I think it overstated it. Why? Because when the government is heard that the amount of the broker fee that these workers have to pay in the origin country, then they have to do something about that. They have to come to understand, and then to get information, and then to investigate, to do some investigation. And I think without doing such a things and saying something like that, they don't have no control. And I think that is, for me, I see that is a very irresponsible statement. So I think that is the first part about the report. The second part is about the forced labor, prosecuting traffickers regarding to the forced labor. According to the report, is saying something like that is Taiwan authority convicted 65 laborers, traffickers. My understanding, because in my office here at the moment we have about 50 victims of human trafficking. They belong to different cases. And the government did convict the employers, not using the anti-human trafficking law. They're using different law to convict these traffickers, these employers. Therefore, I think that, to go into detail and then to see clearly whether this is correct or not, I think that I would like to challenge that. And then the third thing, I would like to say something about protection. In the report, there are at least 20 shelters and 3 run by the NIA, and then the rest run by the Labor Department. That's correct. However, this year, the NGO, we experienced that the NIA, the trend is that they will take the trafficking victims to send to the center that run by the NIA. So previously, it didn't happen that way. So the way I see it, that sometimes because the NIA shelter is located in a remote area, it is not really convenient for the workers. And moreover, regarding to the respecting culture and the language, they have to be considered about these facts as well. So I have heard, and I have read some reports saying that they have people who talk their own language, but I doubted it.
So with regard to that last point that you were making, you were saying that Taiwan does actually have some shelters for these migrant workers, but in a lot of cases they're in not very good locations, so they're difficult for the workers to get to, and they're also not staffed by anybody who can speak their language. So there's a language barrier, and perhaps some of these workers would be a little bit afraid to go there. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I would have to correct this. There are 21 shelters, not only 20. And 3 run by the NIA, and then 18 are run by the Labor Department. People, I have heard from victims of human trafficking complaining that the NIA shelter is far away, and they don't have people who speak the language so that they can talk to them. And I think that those are the barriers that the NIA has to take into consideration. Don't take the victim to put in the NIA shelter for the sake of having people to live in that shelter, but be serious about the needs of the human trafficking victims and respond to those needs. So I think that is a point that I want to raise.
We've been speaking to Father Peter Nguyen Van Hung. He's the founder and head of Taoyuan-based NGO Vietnamese Migrant Workers and Brides. Father Hung, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Keith, for giving me this opportunity to share with your listeners. And good health and peace to all of you.
You can learn more about his organization at his website, www.taiwanact.net. That's it for this episode of Taiwan Talk. Do be sure to check out the ICRT blog page for this episode. This week we've got a ton of good links to related articles, and please, if you would, leave a comment while you're there. Thanks for listening. For ICRT, I'm Keith Menconi.